People do look to cinema to be that sort of guide track to how you know what love should look like and whether, I mean, this is love or whether it's not. And it's weird because I've just broken up with someone and you again apply a cinematic reference to how does the breakup look and what am I supposed to do and are we going to run to each other in a train station in 3 weeks from now.
I think love and passion is the most difficult emotions to try to portray as a director, and feeling that and knowing that, I just wanted to do the best that I could.
I live in a country where a woman can marry a woman and a man can marry a man, and in a way, as a filmmaker, you should also talk about this, about the optimistic ending. We've seen far too many films about hate, rejection, loneliness. And I think there's more to life than that, and there's also more to gay life than being alone and being hated by everyone.
I love movies, and think of Wuthering Heights, for example. That's a film about passion. I think one goes to see these films to live vicariously through them.
The closing scene of the piano teacher, Isabelle Huppert stabs herself in the heart or the chest with this knife, and then she sort of leaves the opera house. I think I identify more with the characters who want love badly, more than the average person, and there's always like a twist to what they're looking for. It's unconventional love, or it's got to do with repression, or it's got to do with age or race. I definitely identify with the pursuit of the main character in my film, who, although he's middle-aged and has a family, he's also in pursuit of happiness. And he's in pursuit of happiness despite his negative feelings towards his sexual preference that he's desperately trying to repress. But what he wants out of life is what I want out of life. I want to be with someone, and I want to be happy. The biggest theme that I sort of toy with in this film is the concept of beauty and how that relates to love. The main character doesn't perceive himself as being a beautiful person in terms of his physical appearance, and the object of his desire is this physically perfect or physically attractive man. And my main character despises the younger man because of that, but also is completely enthralled by it and magnetized toward it. And there's that tension where, you always feel like in the world there are two kinds of people, those who have access to love and those who feel like they don't because of what they look like. And I think that that dynamic is a very important part of how we feel about, with the question of do we deserve love and will we have that happy ever after. I think that the media definitely projects this idea that love is for beautiful people. I rewatched Death in Venice when I was preparing this film because I really love that book. It's this very lyrical description of his growing love, essentially, for the younger guy. But the film or the book, it's not completely honest about what it is because there's a sexual element that they just completely desterilize. In this film, I definitely wanted to show the lustful aspect of this main character's pursuit. This is a moment where he should be so involved in being the father of the bride, but he's completely and utterly infatuated with this younger man, and it's kind of the moment where the poison has, seeped into the wound, and it's immediately taken effect, and from here on out, it's going to be on this course of slow release. And I think that love is kind of suicidal in some way, because if you really believe in love being a very important aspect of life and a pursuit that you should attempt, then surely you should be prepared to suffer the consequences of not achieving it or not of finding it.
Dealing with aspects of intimacy and connection with people is just a really good way to understand someone's character. To me, the actual theme is more how you define yourself, who you want to be, how you express that, the struggles that come from trying to work out who you are and what you want from the world. Using, I suppose, a love story to get to the heart of that.
I'm a grown man and I look at you and I see you and you can do it and you're amazing. don't understand why I can't.
For me, love is very much being yourself with someone else, and to find out different parts of your personality or struggle with that and to get to know yourself. When I finished the first draft, I met the producer, and she was going through the same story in reality, actually, divorcing her husband for many, many years and falling in love with a woman. It was the first film that came out of Sweden in about 12 years, dealing with two women who fall in love. And most of the movies that I saw with this theme was kind of depressing and dark, and usually the characters end up being psychotic or, you know, killing themselves. And I just felt that I wanted to make a happy and positive film about falling in love. I think that the people and the persons portraying that is the most important thing. I think that the acting is so much more than just dialogue, and it's very much in the presence and in the energy. We used my screenplay as a sort of base to improvise from. It was just very important that they felt comfortable in what they were saying.
You know, you're telling a story about two people connecting, so the most important thing about that is just being able to watch those two people connect. And that has to be the most important thing.
What time do you start work?
10 o'clock.
Got a bit of time then.
Mm.
Do you want to get back into bed? You were pretty wasted last night.
The relationship that the audience has with the people on screen is almost like it's a kind of threesome in some strange way, that you just are there with these people, kind of falling in love with them as they are with each other. And to me, I think that's the most important thing. And also not, you know, being able to take your time in that, because when you meet someone, it does take a bit of time before you realise you like them. So that was important to me, just take it slowly and have it kind of things just slowly revealing themselves, bits of character slowly revealing themselves.
Was I a dick?
I had to save you from the Hobbit.
There's a close-up of the two of them when they're talking, and the camera just slowly goes between the two. And I think that, to me, I knew was really important, because it's the moment when they both realise that there's something about the other person that is different and that they like. And especially for the Glenn character who's doing the tape recording, it's like he suddenly realises, oh, okay, this Russell guy is not like all the other guys I've done this with. There's something different. And, you know, that's why it's such an intense close-up for that whole scene, basically.
I just thought that we were having a really nice time. And it was lovely. It was more than enough for me. So, sorry, Glenn, if I don't make your grade.
The relationships in my films, I guess, are really physical passion, you know. They're stirred up for each other. Think of the two boys on Underground, where that's sheerly physical, you know, there's nothing else between them. Most of my films, the relationships don't last too long. I can't think of anyone that really builds up to a long-term relationship. In my own private life, I haven't had a long-term affair or a live-in lover. And so I suppose that has something to do with it too. Most of the people in my films, it's just temporary. I find that watching sex on the cinema very boring. And the whole thing is so subjective that unless you're turned on by the guys you're watching, it's rather boring. I was more interested in getting the affection between two guys than the actual sex. Particularly in the gay world, I think you're turned on very quickly. Some people are, I am certainly. physically, and by the physicality of the people. I'm looking for good-looking guys. You know, I particularly like black guys, and something about them that tells me, yes, you know, I could have sex with him. I meet somebody, and just while I'm talking, I think, oh, there's something happening here. You know, I'm turned on. Doesn't happen very, certainly not anymore. God knows, you know, I'm 88 this year, and I've really lost a lot of interest in sex. But that's what always happened to me. Your whole concept changes, doesn't it? And you think, oh, I wonder how it would be getting intimate with him or her. And suddenly your mind races through all sorts of situations that you might be living together and what a wonderful life you could have. And then the next 2 minutes you've pulled away and you're into a different situation and back to life again, you know? It's that kind of thing that happens.
Drawing on my own personal experiences, both someone who's lived in the States and lived in Iran, and on my family's experiences, and a lot on fantasy, just kind of as a young girl, fantasy being an important aspect of any young girl's coming of age. I was evaluating how repression affects people's relationships. It's so much about what's left unsaid. It's so much about what we can express, the limitations of our desires, that inability to go that one extra step. And so much of that between the two girls is, even though they're expressing their sexuality and their sensuality with each other, you know, in the film, so much of it happens in their minds, and very little happens in real time. And it's to show that there is a barrier even in their expression of sexuality and sensuality. It's something that's maybe not that common in the West, because, you know, people have more freedoms on many levels, and maybe they don't feel those sort of limitations, or maybe some people do. But to me, that was important, this sort of the self-imposed restrictions that these girls have. Even though, like, of course, the state has restrictions, and I explore that aspect of it. Even in moments where they feel free, you know, there's still, in a way, there's a limit to their freedom, and so much of their freedom happens in their minds when they escape into their imagination.
We had this plan to really deal with the beauty of being in love with another man, and all the romantic things about it, and not a film that deals with the impossibilities, and so really wanted to look the other way. Nature is a way of expressing feelings that you can't really tell with words. As an adolescent, you're like full of emotions, and there's no one you can talk to. It's secrets, and nature will always listen, and nature will always be there, and, like, in your imagination at least, express what you can't express yourself. So that's like the rescue of nature, and so that's why the film is also, it's set at the North Sea coast, and the sea plays an important role in this film. They could go to the beach, to the sea, and, like, get in contact with the wind and the water and all elements of nature. I think it's a very teenager thing to do, but grown-ups do that too, and they like project their feelings in nature. And I think also for the audience, I don't want to underestimate the audience. I'm sure the audience can fill the blanks when they see like the powerful nature, and they have just seen some scenes which have like meanings.
I'm just so weary of conventions, stylistic conventions, music or camera that trick you into very like superficial representations of love, which is why, again, The Piano Teacher is such a great example, because that movie is filled with great classical music, and she's a piano teacher. But all the pieces are slightly abrasive, Rachmaninoff and Schubert, who went mad, and so I think that in my film we do try to lull you into this sort of very sweet moment, but it's because the emotion is kind of one that you wouldn't associate with this kind of character, because he's this middle-aged white Afrikaans South African man, and we're applying this music that is usually from the point of view of the sort of like very pretty female character. But I think that at the end of the day, men, it's also got to do with gender and your role in society, and men are supposed to sort of not have butterflies or become too emotional around these things, and my main character is struggling with this because he interprets his pursuit of happiness as a bad thing, and as something that he's trying to fight against and then can't, and gives into it, and that's why his eventual actions in the film are violent, because he's not as emotionally educated as he could be.
Cinematic representations of love has become so over-romanticised, and it's so far removed from reality, and I think it's quite dangerous, because everybody expects that love and relationships are going to be like that, and of course they're not like that. And still, this film is a film, and it is constructed, and there is a romanticised notion of it, or it's a compressed timescale, or whatever it is. But I think I certainly wanted to make it realistic, but at the same time kind of play with the conventions of more traditional romantic drama. And so, I mean, they end up on a train station like that. It's so cliched, it could be so cliched. But every time I just try to kind of play with that and make it feel more realistic, So when he gets to the train station, he doesn't have to run there, and he's there on time, and he can sit and have a coffee. Just little things like that to make it feel like, that there's some kind of reality to it.
So is this our Notting Hill moment?
I've never seen it, ever.
Neither have I, but I imagine there's a declaration of love and everybody applauds.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about my relationship with cinema is that having always wanted to be a filmmaker, I take reference from film for the way that I behave in the real world, and I think a lot of people do that as well. We're a generation of people who have always had film in our lives. I think that what I love about great films are the ones that deal with themes that we're frightened of. Like obsession is a really fantastic human behavior, and we all know when we're doing it to a degree, and there's nothing better than a filmmaker that's able to put you in the position and to travel you through this experience where it frightens you completely, because it's so much a part of what you are and what you do, and you're seeing someone else do it. And I remember The Talented Mr. Ripley. I really was so impressed by the way that Anthony Minghella was able to give you Tom Ripley in this variation of themes where you totally understood what he was doing, because everyone does that. We've all been 15 where we've liked someone and we've done crazy things to try and get close to that person, but here's a grown man and it's going out of control, and there's that, I can totally identify with that character, but it frightens me as much. At the same time I always feel like, oh, but if I was in that position I wouldn't necessarily do that. But that's the great thing about film. It gives you that voyeuristic opportunity to play out your emotions.